So today is January 6th, and both sides are still talking about it. And both sides are still talking about it because on one side of the fence, you've got people who wants to see the January 6th insurrectionists held accountable, and we want to move past that day. And on the other side of the fence, you've got a group of people who wants to make every excuse in the world for the January 6th insurrection, and they want to celebrate that day. Now, I will never forget watching the events of that day unfold. And as it did, I remember saying to myself, this has got to be the end of Donald Trump. This has got to be the end of him in the political arena, and it's got to be the end of MAGA. I remember thinking, okay, they've shown us who they truly are. The entire time he was in office, I kept telling people, this ain't going to end well, because these people look up to this dude like a cult of personality, and he could tell them to do anything, and they would do it. And people kept saying, Brando, you're being too extreme about it, man. You're getting all bent out of shape over nothing. There's no way those people would ever do anything like that. And I said, I believe they would. And then they sure as hell did. Because Donald Trump continued to double down on the big lie. He continued to push that the 2020 election was stolen until he got them worked up into a frenzy to go to the Capitol and make an event out of January 6th. Let's be honest with ourselves. How many of you out there actually knew that January 6th is the day that we certify election results? And if you did know, when was it ever an event in American history? It wasn't, because in the past, whenever someone won an election, the other person lost, the other person conceded, and everybody went home, and we just waited on Inauguration Day. January 6th was always just a quiet day that happened behind closed doors, but it wasn't that day, because Donald Trump worked them up into a frenzy, and he got them there, ready to overturn an election, ready to overthrow the government, ready to hang the vice president if he tried to certify the results. And I remember thinking, man, this has got to be the end of it. It has to be. There's no way that these people will ever get a pass for this. But yet here we are in 2024. Donald Trump is the front runner of the party, and you got people like Marjorie Taylor Greene out here trying to celebrate it. Now, these are the same people that told us that on that day that was Black Lives Matter. That was Antifa. That was Joe Biden that done that to make them look bad. And you've got people like Vivek Ramaswamy out here saying, oh, it was definitely an inside job. Well, if it was all of those things, what are you celebrating? What is there to celebrate it if that's what happened that day? Are you trying to celebrate the fact that you rose up and tried to overthrow the government? Because if you did, if that's what you're trying to celebrate, you guys failed miserably at it. So again, what is there to celebrate? This is not a day that we should ever look back on fondly. It's not a day that we should ever look back on and honor it in any way. It is a stain on our history. It is the day that people got so caught up in their feels they just couldn't accept defeat. And are we ever going to be able to have an election again in this country where someone wins, someone loses, and everybody goes back home? One side goes back to the drawing board and tries to figure out how to win it the next time. Are we ever going to get back to that? Because they're already planting the seeds that if Trump don't become the nominee, the Republicans rigged it against him. And if he loses in 2024, it was rigged against him again. They're already planting the seeds for it, just like they did back in 2020. Back in 2020, Trump did the same thing. The only way I can lose this is if it's rigged. He planted those seeds, so if he lost, he could remind everybody of that. But if he'd have won, we wouldn't be having this conversation because he would have never looked into it. It's not like he would have said, oh, wait a minute, hold on. This is the guy that was saying, just find me the votes. That alone, that one sentence alone should have been enough to show anybody, hey, this guy's a con artist. Just find him for me. Just make me the winner. He said it out loud, and people are still okay with it. And they're still out here celebrating this day. Well, it's not a day that any of us should ever celebrate, and it's not a day we should look back on fondly. But as we go into 2024, we have to think back to that day. And we have to realize that that same group of people that was all fired up then, they're fired up again. And they're ready to go back and vote again. And Donald Trump's out there saying, well, if I get reelected, I'll negotiate for a third term. He's already said that. And they've already said they're cool with him being dictator for a day. So that's what we need to think about as we go into the 2024 election. That's what we're up against. Unfortunately, that's what we're up against again.